A construction company is hired to design and build a new office building. They have a single project PI policy in place to cover the duration of this project. During the construction phase, a design flaw is discovered in the structural engineering plans, which leads to significant delays and additional costs to rectify the issue. Large construction projects are complex and have many risks. Choosing the right insurance product helps give insureds peace of mind that the entire project is protected from mistakes or errors jeopardizing the project's completion. Welcome to another episode of Ensuring Trust with Leppard, a podcast where we share the insights and stories behind the Leppard underwriting team who are in the business of protecting your reputation. We're talking about Single Project Professional Indemnity, the cover for professional indemnity and liability that can help stop a mistake or accident from harming the completion of a development or construction. Back with us is Vanessa Klebber, Head of Corporate Risks, and Keith Mumford, the Head of Single Projects. Great to speak to you both again.
Hi.
Hello.
Vanessa, can you give us a brief overview of SPPI and how it differs from annual PI? Touch on Leppard's product offering and briefly outline what information is required for quoting.
Yeah, sure. So annual PI covers all contracts. It's renewed annually and it's priced taking into account all contracts and income in the preceding financial year. Single project PI covers a particular contract. It includes numerous parties and can cover the principal, the professional team, the contractor, and subcontractors. It is priced for the duration of the contract, including the maintenance period, and premium is paid upfront prior to the contract commencing. In terms of the Leppard risk appetite, we can write a maximum of 75 million. Higher limits will require co-insurance support, subject to us not exceeding our cap. Maximum periods that we can write are 5 years, and so that would be a 3-year contract with a 2-year maintenance period, for example. So to quote, we require a copy of the contract conditions, especially the risk and insurance clauses, and a fully completed proposal form which outlines and summarizes who the professionals are, who the subcontractors are, what the scope of works are, what the contract period is, the contract value, and the maintenance period.
Okay. Keith, I know this is your hobby horse, as you shared previously. Can you give us an idea of the types of SPPI projects we are seeing presently?
Well, if we can just start by clarifying one point, that the single project PI policy, there are two forms. One is a straightforward single project PI policy, which covers the negligence as far as design and supervision is concerned. And the second is a single project's design and construct PI policy, which then includes contractors and subcontractors' liabilities for their design. It has become common for financiers and developers to insist upon single project PI policies where the contract is one of design and construct, or sometimes they might take out single project PI cover for the professionals only. This is really to protect the financial effect of the contract, in that they don't obviously want to have to pay additional financing costs if the contract's delayed. It's becoming, as I said, becoming more and more popular. We're even seeing now one or two design and construct policies required for road construction. In my view, that's a little can and cannot work, but that's another story for another day. Mainly buildings, structural buildings, the odd bridge. AXA, anything that AXA has built in the past has always attracted a single project PI design and construct, but they don't have anything, unfortunately, moving along at the moment. Rand Water used to insist. I'm not sure what they're doing these days. The other water authorities we see occasionally. Sewage plants, quite a few sewage plants we've seen. And of course, the big thing is alternative energy. Every single alternative energy development has to have a single project PI policy in place. It makes a lot of sense. Not only is it a cost control element in terms of the failure of the design, but there's also obviously cost control in terms of the premium. The other huge advantage as far as single projects go, a single project PI policy go, is that the developer and the employer know that the policy is going to be in place. They don't have to rely on annual policies that can be cancelled. So that is one of the major reasons for taking out a single project PI policy, continuation of cover.
So, Vanessa, when we look at the scenario that we were talking about, especially around where there are design flaws and there are issues with engineering plans, can you maybe give us some thoughts around that kind of a scenario?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the scenario, the primary exposure is the design flaw itself, which could lead to structural issues, safety concerns, and additional costs for redesign and reconstruction. The discovery of the design flaw could cause delays, which can lead to penalties under the contract, loss of revenue for the client, and, of course, increased project costs. If the design flaw results in damage to neighbouring properties or injury to third parties, there could also be claims for compensation. And then lastly, the construction company's reputation could suffer, leading to a loss of future business opportunities.
So, Keith, how important is understanding the dictates of a contract? For example, FIDIC, NEC, as well as EPC and EPCM. When ensuring the contract is covered adequately, and how types of contracts entered into dictate the structure of the policy in terms of named insureds, etc., etc. What are potential contractual pitfalls, and how can one mitigate against these?
Yeah, that's a very, very important aspect of contracting, is to understand the contract conditions, which unfortunately sometimes we find are not very well understood by the contracting fraternity. When it comes to single project PI policies and NEC and EPC type contracts, it is essential that the whoever's putting the policy together understands exactly who the professionals are and what it's covering. And what I'm getting at when I say what it's covering is we do have the case very often that a developer who wants to build a multi-story building will award two different contracts. He will award an earth moving and excavation and foundation contract, and possibly lateral support in that, to one contractor, and then he will appoint and take out another policy for the structure above that basement. Now, if it's not clearly understood, if they take out that policy for the construction of the basement, that oftentimes what happens, they say, okay, that contract's going to be a period of design and construct 18 months, and we'll have a defects liability of 12 months. Now what happens is now you're going to build a 20-story structure on top of this. The construction of that 20-story structure is going to take 36 months. So now, if you can imagine that you've got a period of 18 months to 12 months for the basement, you've got 30 months. Now, after the first 18 months, we now start building the 20-story building, which takes 36 months. When that building is, say, halfway up, now the foundation's starting to feel the load, and we start having problems with the foundations. Yeah. The defects liability period on the construction, on a single project PI policy for the construction and design of the foundations expires. Now we have a problem. The it's found now that the basement is under-designed, can't take the load of the building, but the policy is expired underneath. One of two things can happen here. The client can pay for the rectification work. He can't claim under the Single Project PI policy because that's expired. And he would have difficulty claiming against the design engineer, saying that his annual policy must now apply, because the design engineer will say, hang on a moment, I haven't declared those fees under my annual policy because I didn't have to, because you, Mr. Employer, took out a Single Project PI policy, and therefore I don't have any. His underwriters can say, we're not indemnifying him because we didn't get fees for that project. So that's a very, very important aspect to take into account when putting Single Project PI in place. I'm not sure whether there's anything else. I could go on for ages about this, but...
Keith, can you give us an overview of the standard project lifespan and pressure points, for example, pre-construction phase, including conception, tender process, financing, appointment, handover, and post-construction?
Yeah, I'd love to. As far as pressure points are concerned, I'd like to just put forward the ideas that we have at Leppard with regard to what we call retroactive cover. Okay. Retroactive cover means that when the policy is taken out, say on the 1st of January, the retroactive cover will go back to where the developer first thought about this project.
Okay.
And then going forward, he obviously put out contracts and so on, and then the contract started on the 1st of January. Now, we at Leppard believe that we actually don't need to bother about retroactive cover. We don't have, we're not concerned about when the design was done or when it started, because the claim is only going to occur once the contract started.
All right.
So it doesn't matter how far back you go. So that's a very, very good point as far as we're concerned, a thing that should be considered carefully and looked at very carefully in terms of what retroactive cover, because we know that our colleagues in the market restrict that period quite severely. Going forward, it is very seldom that a claim arises within the first 12 to 18 months, depending on the project period. But if the project's, say, 3 years, with a 2-year defects liability period, it's highly unlikely that you're going to get a claim in the first 12, 18 months.
Okay.
Unless there's a basement failure, as I mentioned, or piling failure, or lateral support failure. But those are separate issues.
So Vanessa, considering what Keith has shared, do you have some observations?
Sure. So I think the important thing is, in terms of project management, it's essential to implement a rigorous design review process and have regular peer reviews and third-party audits. This will help catch errors before construction phase. The other thing is to establish strong quality control processes during the construction to identify issues early. Also, include clauses in contracts that limit liability for design errors and provide for extensions of time in case of delays due to unforeseen issues. Then I think it's critical to maintain open and regular communication with all parties to manage expectations and address issues quickly. Continuous professional development is important to ensure professionals keep abreast of latest industry standards and practices. And then lastly, to ensure that the Single Project PI policy that you have in place provides necessary coverage for all potential exposures, including design errors, delays, and any third-party claims that may arise.
Then, in terms of securing adequate insurance, what should potential insureds and brokers be cognizant of?
Yes, so the first thing is market capacity. I think that's important to touch on that. Single Project PI capacity has reduced as there are fewer players in the South African market. Additional treaty restrictions in terms of capacity and maximum policy periods make it difficult in the current environment. And then, of course, larger projects require programs with multiple insurers, given that a lot of insurers restrict their maximum capacity. When should insured source cover? Cover should be arranged well in advance of the project starting.
All right.
So probably a tender phase is when they should start considering a single project PI. This is to ensure that the correct policy structure and cover is obtained timeously. Delaying it is risky, as projects could actually be derailed if a project is not covered adequately or timeously, and could affect financing in terms of the project. And essential information, I've touched on that previously. We need sight of the contract conditions and a fully completed proposal form in order to be able to quote.
And signed and dated.
And signed and dated. I was actually just about, I wanted to chime in when you said the cover should be taken out as early as possible. I was like, yeah, like Keith said, when he was thinking about it.
Yes.
So, Keith, Leppard is often approached to provide single project PI policies for feasibility studies. Why do you not cover this type of single project PI project on their own?
Because, sorry, I shouldn't start a sentence with because, but it's appropriate here. Because if a feasibility study goes wrong, unless the contract is so meticulously and well worded, the PI policy can be hit with all sorts of claims for any, I mean, a feasibility study saying, I think I can do that over there for so much. Well, actually, at the end of the day, when they build it, they found out actually you couldn't build it for so much. It cost us 3 times more. Hence, your feasibility study was wrong. Nonsense. Things changed in the meantime.
Yeah.
Facts changed. So we don't like, and I don't think anybody, quite frankly, should write PR policy for a feasibility study unless the feasibility study forms part of the contract.
Okay.
Then you have some control,
Yes.
and you have input to that feasibility study, and you can see when it comes out, no, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's right, that's okay, fine, we can do that. But a general feasibility study, not a chance.
No go. Then what covers are specifically excluded from a standard single project PI, and what bespoke policies are required to cover these uninsured risks?
Okay, I want to just go back a moment there, because this is very applicable to this question. When a single project PI policy is put in place, adjacent and not adjacent, running parallel to that is the single project contractors all risks policy.
Okay.
Now, the contractors all risks policy normally comes with a 12-month defect liability period. That's standard. They don't like extending that. Very, very difficult. So now you've got a design and construct period of 36 months, and there's the single project contractors all risk policies in place, and then they've got a 12-month defect liability period. Now you've got the same thing for the PI, the single project PI policy. It's got a 12-month period, a 36-month period, plus now the developer says, no, but wait a minute, I want 24 months defects liability because it takes longer maybe for a design defect to show.
Yeah.
Fine. Now, in that additional 12 months, so say that the contractor's all risk policy is now expired, it's got its 48 months, and now the only cover we got is the single project PI policy. Now, suddenly, a failure does occur, and it's a catastrophic failure, and it causes damage to the rest of the structure. So say, for argument's sake, it's a foundation failure. And that foundation failure causes a column to come down and the rest of the building. Now, if the contractor's all risks policy had been in place, then the contractor's all risks policy in terms of the DE3 or LEG2 wording would pick up the resultant damage of the defective design. So the defective design is in the foundation. The rest of the building was perfect. There was nothing wrong with the design. So the damage to the rest of the building has to be picked up by the contractor's all risk policy. But the contractor's all risk policy is expired.
Sure.
Now, if I'm sitting there as an underwriter, I say, but hang on, Mr. Client, you didn't tell me that the contractor's all risk policy was going to be 12 months shorter than my policy. Now you're expecting me to pay for the whole structure. I didn't allow for that in my pricing. So that sort of thing is absolutely essential, and the broker needs to understand that. And he needs to make sure that policy periods are correct in terms of that sort of thing. Because they could have end up in a situation, a claim like that, where the poor client is now left with no building. His tenants are gone and he's losing money hand over fist, and who does he claim against?
Oh,
the broker maybe.
So in addition to that, there are some specific factors that are excluded from single project PI policies, and these include any deliberate acts, fraud or criminal activities by the insured parties. This isn't different to your normal annual PI policy. Any disputes arising from contractual obligations that are not related to professional services, example, payment terms or delivery schedules, are excluded. Any claims known prior to inception of the policy. Single project PI does not cover bodily injury or property damage unless it directly results from the professional services. Any claims related to pollution or environmental damage unless specifically included under the policy. And then, of course, cybersecurity breaches and related liabilities are excluded. And any claims arising from poor workmanship or construction defects that do not involve professional negligence are excluded.
Keith, there have been some large single project PI claims in South Africa. Comes to mind the Injaka bridge collapse, Greyston bridge collapse, the recent George building collapse. As a qualified civil engineer and experienced loss adjuster, and now single project PI specialist underwriter, do you have some risk management suggestions to construction professionals in this space?
It is extremely difficult to capture as a professional all the potential errors that a design might have that you can't pinpoint at the commencement of the contract. So yes, there's a lot of aspects of project management that need to be addressed, because on site you need professional project management on larger contracts. Look, on smaller contracts, it's just not economically viable. Yeah. But on larger contracts, it most definitely is a requirement. Can I quote some claims now?
Yeah, sure.
I want to quote a claim that occurred, and when I was building that complex, and he had obviously all the different professionals, and in the process of building, as was apt to do, he started changing things and extending. And Keith phoned me one day and he said, please come and help me, because we've put in claims for all this additional stuff. The QS has approved it, everybody's approved, but we're not getting paid. Can we claim? What can we do? And I went to see him. I said, sorry, but there's nothing much you can do. And the quantity surveyors were also getting more and more frustrated, and the project managers, because they kept on saying, you've got to pay them. We've recommended, here's the certificates, you must pay. And so the end of the contract came, and now we're at their wits' end. They didn't know what to do, because all the professionals were there on their side. And so in his way decided that no, these guys have all been negligent. So they had a single project PI policy in place. And he sued them in terms of the single project PI policy. He wasn't a named insured, so he had to sue.
Okay.
There's a subtle difference.
Yes.
If you're a named insured, you have direct access to the policy. Right. You don't have to sue anybody. You've just got to prove they were negligent. But if you're not a named insured, you've got to sue them, and then the policy reacts. And the underwriters in this case decided, well, he sued the QS, the project manager, and the development manager. And the MD of the QS has phoned me one day, and he said, come and help me. I don't know what's going on here. And I went to see him, and I said, you've got a huge problem here. He said, why is that? I said, well, this claim has been fought by the insurers, and they've appointed, much to my absolute amazement, 3 different sets of attorneys to defend the 3 different insureds. And the limit of indemnity on the policy was 50 million, which was an error by the brokers. It should have been 100 million, but it was only 50 million. And at that stage, the legal costs were running at 29 million.
Oh.
So the MD of the QS said to me, what do I do? And I said to him, there's nothing much you can do. Because at that stage, they were waiting for the arbitrator's opinion.
Yes.
And they had appointed a team of 3 arbitrators. And then, so the money left in the pot to pay the claim was 29 million. The claim was like 70 million.
Oh.
He said, what do I do? I said, well, if the 29 million that's all that's left, you've got to take it off the 70 million, whatever the claim is, and divide it by 3, and each company is having to pay their 1/3. Anyway, the adjudicators, not an arbitrator, the adjudicators' ruling came out, and they said that the development manager was in the clear, but the project manager and the QSs were guilty, negligent. They obviously said, no, this is out of the question, and they advised that they're not paying, and they told the insurers, you're not paying. We're not now footing this bill, 2 of us. And one of the adjudicators passed away, so they had to appoint a new one. Well, the new guy came up within about 2 weeks of being appointed, and he said, I can't see where the claim is. I just don't see where the claim. There is no claim. There's no claim. So it went away. But the insurers have spent 21 million of their own money on the defense of something that wasn't a claim. And in fact, I'd said to the MD of the QSs when I'd read everything, I said, I don't see where the claim is. And that's something also that when writing, when dealing with single project PI covers and particularly claims, there needs to be project management as well to manage those claims that they don't run away. You know, we fortunately Leppards have a very tight control on that sort of thing.
In summary, a single project professional indemnity policy is crucial for managing the risks associated with a specific construction project. By understanding potential exposures such as design errors, project delays, third-party claims, and reputation damage, you can implement effective mitigation strategies. These include thorough design reviews, strong quality control measures, contractual protections, regular communication, professional development, and comprehensive insurance coverage. Thanks to both of you, Keith and Vanessa, for sharing your insights. To find out more about Leppard products or to get support as a broker, visit leppard.co.za. Listen to previous episodes of Insuring Trust with Leppard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Be sure to follow @Leppard & Associates on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Till we meet again, make sure your reputation is protected.